Hi, everybody. I'm Barry Kostrinsky, and these are talks that I've been doing. I used to do it on a different platform with a nonprofit, and I do this. We've done something new recently. We have a model, Maux Kelly. I got that right, Mo, I think. And Mo's been a model when I had a gallery. I've drawn her for many years, and I'm sort of trying to integrate drawing and talking about art and seeing how it feeds each other. So thank you, Mo. And by the way, there's no charge for any of this. If you'd like to contribute to Mo, who's doing this for free, you can reach out to me and we'll give you her PayPal if you'd like. But obviously, this is all offered for free. Tonight, we have a talk with a collage group that Jill Gewitz formed, and Liz Engelhardt and Deanna. Oh, Jill, help me with Deanna's last name.
Sally.
That's that. And Deanna, Jill started a little group, and the four of us have been collaging maybe for 2 years on and off, a little bit off recently, but we did recently go back to it. And I got to tell you, it's a blast. Art is meditative when you do it. And when you do it with a small group, you're somehow sharing in that. And then, we often say, what do you think of this? What do you think of that? We have like bounce back on positioning and ideas. And I would say it's a great thing. It got me into collage, which I would say I had no plans of doing, but it's really Jill's doing. And that's how an artist influences another artist in the best way possible. You just don't know how much we inch each other forward in different and new directions. So we have Mo tonight modeling, doing 5-minute, 10-minute. We're going to leave it to Mo. She's a great model. And I'm going to hand it over to Jill. Jill will sort of introduce the other artists, talk about, Jill is very organized, a little bit more than me, as you can see. And she will do screen sharing, mostly off Instagram. By the way, the talks are on YouTube, my YouTube channel. And the links for all that is on my website, which is justmyname.com. So beforehand, thank you, Mo. And also, I thank all the other presenters, Liz, Deanna, Jill, and I'm in the group. So thank you, Barry. Oh, you're welcome. And
thank you too, Barry.
Thank you, Barry.
Thank you, Barry.
I also like to review fine art.
Oh, there you go. You mentioning, Babs, that you're interested in someone who likes to review fine art. There you go.
Great.
There you go.
Good for a few zines. Oh, that's good to know. Yeah. But
So,
I had a Substack, and so I'm putting it on there now.
Jill, I'll hand it over to you.
Okay. So during COVID, still COVID in my opinion, I started to go to Barry's ATOA group because for years I'd been intending to, but I never was able to go. And I really came to appreciate Barry's knowledge of art history and his bringing together people and creating a community of artists online. And that's how I got to know Barry. And then, I brought people together from various parts of my life. Deanna and I had been neighbors for 8 years, and we used to do art hangs together in her apartment on a regular basis. Deanna is over there. And and then Liz and I got to know each other through a music group that we both write music and critique it, and in a group we got to know each other. So, and she has a long history with painting and photography, watercolors, and incredible collages. So I thought I would ask just a small group of people to come together through Zoom on a regular basis. There is featuring Leo the kitty making an appearance. Leo, we have to have Leo making an appearance. But in any event, so anyway, it was really great to get together on a regular basis. It gave us a sense of community. We found some similarities, some differences in our artwork, and we worked collaboratively, and Barry noticed that me and Deanna had more sort of minimalist approaches, and that Liz and he had more elements involved in the artwork. So it was really interesting to just get everyone's opinion. You know, we would either share it through the video or send photos to each other, and then give suggestions. And through Barry's recommendation of bringing shapes together as I was doing collages, I see his influence. I definitely see Liz's and Deanna's influence. So I was just gonna ask anybody if they wanted to chime in, and before I go to the artwork itself. Liz?
Oh, well, yeah, yeah. So I have a history of from art school of doing a lot of mixed mediums, black and white photography, printing my own photos in the darkroom, doing a lot of manipulation with that, and also printmaking and steel sculpture, welding, and actual oil painting too, and printmaking. And I've always been interested in combining materials. I'm really into texture and really into sculpture, as well as painting and abstraction, as well as representation. So I did a lot of experimenting with printing photographs on fabric and interweaving the fabrics into wall reliefs, and doing prints on material other than paper, and interweaving those into assemblage pieces, wall hangings. And so then work got intense, and career stuff got intense. And then the way that I got back into art was through landscape. And so I got into it through black and white landscape, because I loved black and white photography. So I was kind of drawn into the minimalism of the black and white, the sort of monochromatic palette. And then from there, I started getting back into my love of materials, different materials, disparate materials, and combining them, and did a whole series of collage with just cuttings from magazines, etc. And then now have started getting into using different types of materials and combining them into my paintings. And so it's kind of evolving. It's sort of has gone in a circle. Like I started, and now I'm kind of returning back to what interested me the most when I was in college and making art back then, informed by whatever has happened since then. So that's sort of how I would describe what's been happening with me.
And I know that Deanna, I said, oh my God, Deanna, you have to see Liz's collages. This woman that I'm in a music group, I'm like, you got to see her collages. I've never seen anything like it. And then we both looked at Liz's collages, and it was very inspirational. And we all have different approaches. Also, my background is in photography. But Deanna, you want to talk a little bit before I go to the Instagram pages?
Yeah, sorry about that earlier, Jill. I thought you were talking to the group about the group. My history of collage ties into my history with New York a little bit, in that I really started doing it regularly one cold winter in New York with, an old IKEA dresser and a roommate's old Vintage Life magazines that I plastered all over it. And I still have up in my loft bedroom right now, that really should go in the trash now that I mention it. But that process reminded me that growing up, my dad used to do collage sort of stuff with calendars. He would take images from calendars and glue them onto plaques, and that he, sanded and made and all that sort of stuff. So I initially started doing it regularly, over 20 years ago. And then that sort of evolved into me doing it more artistically and coming at it with a more creative eye of a history in the arts as well. I also write about art. I'm a writer, and so growing up, I always wrote and I danced. I have a history in dance and theater and all that. And so I try to approach a lot of my collage with that sort of sentiment. I started with a lot of vintage magazines and intricate cutouts. I used to joke around that I was like the maniacal cutter because I don't use X-Acto knives. Everything, even really the tiniest little things, I hand cut with the same scissors that I've been using for 20 plus years. I sharpen them. And now that I've sort of not evolved, but physically past being able to handle scissors a lot as much as I used to, and just a little less patience, I'm trying to work more with abstracts and especially abstract backgrounds. I have a background in photography as well. Another thing that Jill and I bonded over. And so I'm using more of my own photos now and just finding different ways to create different unique backgrounds with images, things like that. So that's where I'm at right now with collage.
Okay, and then Barry, did you want to add anything for yourself, your own artistic background or process?
I'll keep it short and simple and say that when I approached collage, I went ahead and I had a really good book on Russian constructivists, and I went ahead and I did the sacrilegious thing. I took a scissor and I cut up the images in the book, and so I'm appropriating from sort of the masters of a certain type of art. And I didn't necessarily cut out the whole form they did at all, but I cut out pieces of the form and then I put it together. And I'm telling you, it's like magic in a way. I'm just taking other artists' stuff, which again is cheating in a way, and I'm recollaging it. And in a way, you're engaging the artists of the past. And you're sort of saying, I could do that too. And I found, having fun with the letters. I would cut up the letters, big chunks of sort of paragraphs in different triangular shapes and put it in there so you couldn't read it. It made no sense. And I like that. So there's sort of a comment on, putting literature that's explaining the art, but nobody understand what it's saying. So it has been a blast. And as I said earlier, it's Jill's influence. I enjoy sharing and, sharing my opinion with the others in the group. And of course, hearing what they have to say. It's sort of like a crit in the best way possible. We're not just complimentary. We offer advice, but it's how you say things. And so again, I thank you, Jill. I love it. I did stop it when the group stopped. And I started again very happily yesterday when we got back together. And so thank you.
Sure. So I'm gonna share screen and then show everyone's.
And one thing I'll mention, when Jill shares screen, you can pin the model if you want to. So what I tend to do is I can exit full screen. Well, there are tricks you can do. You can go to the image. If you're looking for Mo, you can go next to the mute or 3 buttons. And if you click that and go down, the word pin will show. And if you pin her, she will be the image you're seeing. So you can go back and forth. So go ahead, Jill. Sorry there.
Okay. So Deanna started doing dragging string, I guess, Deanna, with paint, and then started adding and embellishing on it. So this is an example. And stop me if anybody wants to just comment on their artwork while I'm moving along.
That was a little fun.
All right, man.
Pandemic fun with the eyeballs, googly eyes.
Oh yeah, this one. That was a photograph and some collage, right?
Yes, that's,
And you maybe talk about where you, where you also get some of your work that you use for collage.
it's interesting that you choosing that piece, because that piece was from another group that I used to be part of, the New York Collage Ensemble. I did that with a meetup with them right when we were locked down, and hence the title of it, where I said it feels like outside, because we were kind of all being giddy for meeting up after a while, and not being able to meet up for a while. And so we were joking around that it kind of feels like being outside with the, jovial atmosphere. But that's, I think, goes without saying, nowadays, those cutouts are the coronavirus. So the little pieces that are floating around, that's the coronavirus cutout. Those are hand cut, printed pieces. And then the foreground is a vintage photo of some kids sitting around outside, over, of course, looking this beautiful scenic area. And then the sky is, I did a printout of the image, and then I just played around with some background colors and some texture. I love using different textures. I used a texturing paste that you mix with paint, and it gives it a crackle effect. Just playing around with the colors, the black and white, etc. So.
Okay. Oh, this one I wound up, we exchanged, actually. I love this one. Did you do this during the group? This is like
No.
a spider.
Yes, that is one of my, no, I didn't do that during a group. That was just one I did on my own. It's an image transfer of one of my photos of a close-up. I do macro photography. And so that's a close-up. It was a close-up of a spider. And I did an image transfer of it, and I did a bunch of different texturizing methods, and just playing with the abstract background and a couple of cutouts. And
sorry.
what happened over there, man? Yeah.
Okay. Is this one already you started or no? This one?
No.
No. Okay. This one I know you did.
That was a Christmas one. Just a little Christmas joy there. Just some cutouts, a little two-dimensional effect. If you want to go up towards more of the recent ones, Jill.
I will make a quick comment about the bird imagery. I found this out recently. There are a lot of images of that bird, that beak face, that's sort of associated with dread or surrealism. It actually goes back to the belief that birds were carriers of the Black Plague. And so that imagery comes from that. And we often lose like where our imagery comes from. We just know the imagery. But of course it didn't come, the plague was not transmitted by birds. So it's fascinating how mistakes can be made and yet the icon stays. And I like that other piece. So the sort of surreal effect, that you achieved.
Should I go back to, okay. So, I don't know why it's not going back to the.
Oh, that's okay. You need not. I mean.
Okay.
The one that we just looked at, Barry?
Yeah, it was the one with the sort of beak. It had
the blue one.
Yeah, that's why I chose that particular image, because the bird had this sort of like, frustrated, I'll say, look on its face. This is another reason why we love meeting with Barry, because he always has some really cool, interesting art history factoid.
I'm trying to get back to it.
Discuss or to present or talk about during our meetups.
Let me ask you, Deanna, what are birds to you? Why, what's your, why birds and not rabbits, so to speak? Well, is it a symbol?
Jill is on it right now. It's so funny. This is so serendipitous, because the image you see right now is one of the reasons. I'm a dancer, a retired dancer at this point in my life, but so there's a lot of connection there in terms of movement. I like the movement. I like there's a association with a little bit of elegance in that regard. And it's one of my favorite also subjects in a lot of areas to draw and to photograph as well. And of course they can fly, I mean, and the colors, I don't know, they just represent a lot of freedom to me, but also just, there's so many different representations, but yeah, there's this elegance to them and beauty, and you can't get too close, so they have to really trust you to get pretty close.
I will say you're on a sort of iconic image or animal of our times. And I once was lucky enough to be friends with Fred Wilson, an artist at Pace, quite an artist, winner of the MacArthur Prize, and just a sweetheart of a guy. And I said to him, I noticed in the art world today, and this is 10 years ago, birds are like a key repeated imagery. And I said it to him and he goes, Barry, in my day, it was pigs. And it's a weird thing. And I don't know if that was related to cops and a statement, and birds, of course, are throughout art history, usually a reference to, some birds to Jesus Christ, but in general to the spirit. In general,
Yeah.
a bird is, that's the symbol. On the other hand, it's a Jungian symbol. And so it's very deep and sort of cuts across time and probably cultures. And that becomes hard to say why, but just to know you're attracted to it,
Yeah, and different birds have different meanings, and historically, cardinals, they say, whoever they are, right, represent spirits of loved ones and things like that. And this one here that you're looking at, that was a test, this piece here. Those are original photos. The one is a palm. That's a photo of mine, and there's a crane. It's a oh gosh, I'm forgetting the name right now. I'm blanking on it. Florida, South Florida. Well, they're all over Florida. Sandhill crane, excuse me. I did go on a binge of those because they're just crazy. I mean, oh my God, they're huge. They're like 3 feet tall. They sound like dinosaurs, pterodactyls or something. They're fascinating. I could go
So
on
I'm just
about
gonna
birds.
do, Deanna, two more. I want to include also, so this is a lot of Deanna's photography, but I was hoping to catch some with the dancers. Well, actually, these are more prototypical of Deanna's work. And then Deanna, you did a photography set of dancers in Florida when you were there.
Yeah, I did a few photo shoots and some event photography for a dance studio down there. This here is one that, this image of the dancer is one of the images from one of the photo shoots. That was in a show for the New York Collage Ensemble. I don't know if anybody is following Collage, but there's the Scandinavian Collage Museum. We did a show last year called New York State of Mind. So this, one of my new things that I love doing, and in one of my more recent pieces as well, is I love using really abstract backgrounds, and I love using graffiti, but sort of just like that, graffiti that you see just on a mailbox or on a door. And so this is just a photo from, I think it's a mailbox or something in Chelsea. The image was, like I said, the dancer, and then I play around sometimes digitally. I made this a comic image because I like the contrast of the black and white. Anyway, so yeah.
Did you do this one in the group? I don't think so.
No, no.
Well, this was great.
My space phase last year. He found these huge books that were all just space. As you can see, that's like one, the cutouts are there, but then behind that, that's just one giant, like 17 by, whatever, illustrated book. how could you not use that, right?
You know, I like this very much because your background, you know, sometimes your backgrounds are negative space, and that
Yeah.
can work, but it's tricky. But here, your background, you're creating scale with different sizes of the celestial objects. You got the big arcs, which sort of set up compositional play. And yeah, she's like on a tightrope ballerina. You know, you're placing a ballerina in outer space. You know, that's sort of, 2/3 of the surrealist combination going on right there.
So I'm seeing the theme now: birds, dancers, space.
Definitely space, because I know your collection of magazines from space were fascinating to me. I think when we were doing collage at your house and when we were living in the same building, because I just love the
Yeah.
combination of space with your collages. So I think for now I'm going to go on to Liz's.
Thank you so
All right.
much.
Thank you, Deanna.
Thanks for listening, everybody.
Yeah.
Liz does a lot of painting, of formal painting. I was really drawn to her collages. And then when in the midst of the collages she was doing, she got a solo show. Oh, is Liz still on?
Let's see.
Yes,
Yes.
Oh,
I'm
okay.
here.
Yeah, use the arrow on top and bottom of the little images. That'll scroll up and down of the
I'm just
people.
Yeah, I don't know which one I'm gonna pick. Maybe this one.
I'm gonna just quickly plug in to my plug my computer in because it's losing juice. That was that one is all pretty much from magazines, from fashion magazines, and I was just I was just playing around. I love geometric forms and textures and color. And this was like kind of a little bit uncharacteristic of me because it was shoes but I really was drawn to like the primary color and the bright kind of 60s. I wanted to kind of do something that felt sort of 60-ish, retro kind of pop. So that's what I was doing with this. It was like pure experimentation. And then I ended up turning it into a painting for a show that I pitched this idea for, which was a bunch of collages and then paintings that were inspired by the collages. And so that's what I did. I had like 10 paintings and 10 collages with their related inspired paintings. And this was one of the collages that I did a painting of. This was another one that I did not do a painting of this one, but this was inspired by just, cutting out materials from geometry, space, like depth, space, creating abstract kind of worlds, interiors, I think that my work, when it's not specifically representational, there's more formalism. It's more about kind of the materials and about the shapes and about the space, and less about symbolism as much. It's not quite as symbolic as it is kind of about color, texture, shape, and composition and space.
So what I see here is work that aligns more with synthetic cubism. And I can't exactly remember, but analytic cubism, the very heavy gray and brown stuff, where I think he's breaking up the figure and analyzing it, synthetic, maybe putting it together. And what you get, I mean, the important thing, and think the Three Musicians by Picasso, what you get here is an incredible depth play. You know, certainly the blue with the curves and the outlines, you get a little Matisse feel in the curve on the right, but all the elements next to each other create a push and pull. And you're not necessarily doing it with diagonals, you're doing it with colors and different things. And it's actually much more complicated than the Three Musicians in a very good way. And so this is very different than, you know, what was shown before. And yeah, impressive, Liz, very impressive.
Thanks. Thanks.
And then you started getting into collage, and this is for the show that you were doing.
Oh yeah, this actually I did this painting collage while we were working. I was working with the group, with the collage group, and I was using collage materials, but then I started using charcoal, and I started using acrylic paint, and I was just like going nuts and just like loose and just being loose and kind of just playing around with form and shape and using the collage materials to kind of guide the forms and the shapes and the organization of the space. And before I knew it, I had a painting that I kind of liked and reminded me of an urban landscape with hints of water and it just kind of had an amalgam of I think of a kind of unconsciousness, like a subconscious relationship that I have to my environments. I grew up in New York City, born and raised in New York City, and now I'm living in the eastern end of Long Island and surrounded by water. And I don't know, I just felt like it was kind of a mix of what was going on just for me in terms of what I've been visually exposed to.
Yeah, and in this work, you know, this is more like a Kandinsky, you know, pre-Bauhaus sort of. You've got a couple of elements he actually has in there in the top right. You got those four circular forms. And I'm not saying you're looking at Kandinsky, and I always say this, you're drawing from the same source. Likewise, in the bottom left, you've got the vertical and the horizontal lines. Kandinsky would use that, but in general, use of white and sort of bleeding the edges so you don't have this real defined form. It creates a movement and again, a depth play. Kandinsky would move away from that, I think, to his detriment. And, you know, he created something totally different at the Bauhaus. But I think you're in the league where he was at his best. And
wow.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Barry. Yeah, I really loved this one, and I kind of wanted to. It was created in the moment. It was like, because I feel really comfortable with Jill and Barry and Deanna and safe, and I just felt like I felt almost freer and more connected to what I was doing than when I'm alone, you know, because I just felt like I was with a group of really safe, supportive people.
And also, I'll say your use of black is critical here. You know, for so many years, I would never touch black paint. I know how powerful it is. Kandinsky had a painting, Black Lines, and he's pointing out the black is so dominant, but you're doing it incredibly well. It sort of offsets the white. And in my own painting, I've started to put black in. It is the greatest tool to use, almost better than white, but it is challenging because, you know, you've got the black too big or too this, too that. The painting is somewhat ruined, but you're able to get the thin line, the angle in here or there. You know, you're mixing it up. And it does look like a free and spontaneous piece. But when you're spontaneous, it doesn't mean you're free in a bad way. It means you're sort of tapping into sort of everything you know. So that's coming to bear, and you're sort of letting it out. So there's certainly what I would call simple, complicated relationships going on here. that if you try to think it out, you probably would not get here. But if you're free enough to let it go, you're able to, create a good open form. I always say, when I look at a work of art, if I can't get it right away, that's really good. I don't want to be able to say, there's the car, I'm done. I want to be able to have it be a new image, a sort of what is that? And I don't mean I want to pick out the objects in the form, but I think it's alive in that moment. And that could be all relative to how well I see or I don't see. But, I think this work certainly does that.
One of the things, this one of the things about my work is that, and one of the things that's so great about the group is that a lot of times when I am distracted or I am not trying to overly kind of overly impose my will onto whatever it is that I'm doing, and I have there's a little distance, a little distraction, it kind of it gives room for the magic to come in. And so the group kind of, somewhat chatting to you guys, and while I'm working, keeps my will and sort of out of it, and gives the space for kind of the material and the movement to have a life of its own, the movement of my hand and the relationship that I have with the materials, without too much over amount of control. And a lot of magic can happen when I'm not overly focused on what I'm doing, which can sound really, that kind of sounds counterintuitive in a way, but it's been my experience in the past.
And so this one, I started, Deanna and I do transfers, image transfers. So I started to talk to Liz about image transfers, and then she started incorporating transfers and painting. So maybe this will be the last one, I think. This was actually in your solo show that you had during COVID.
Right. This was based on a collage that I did, and I got a print of that collage, quite large or larger than the collage itself, and did a transfer, and then incorporated paint and collage onto the canvas where the transfer was. So it was it was a mix of paint, collage transfer, and bits of paper and materials.
How are you doing the transfer? How does that happen?
Well, I get a print. I get a print on pretty inexpensive paper at UPS or Staples, and then I put gloss medium down on the canvas, and I put the image on the paper face down, and spread it out and burnish it, so make sure that it's adhered carefully to the surface of the canvas, and let it sit overnight. And then in the morning, usually, and then it's ready, and you spray a spray bottle of water on it, and you gently rub off the back of the paper, and you get kind of a ghost image. And sometimes it's clearer than others, but it's always got kind of a nice quality to it.
Deanna and I did an image transfer video, so I can throw that up at the end. It's an instructional video on how to do that.
It's like
Well, I
this
wish to
the
do
holy
that.
grail of collage tools or something. I don't know. Everybody loves doing collage transfers, and it's funny because we go through stages where we're obsessed with them. When I say we, I say Jill and I, but I don't know about anybody else. And right now I'm in a transfer stage again. I say I'm never going to do them again. I'm done with them. And then something happens and I'm like back to, let's try new transfers.
I used to do them with monotypes, but it was done with generally with like either a mineral spirits or some kind of turpentine. It wasn't done with which is interesting, with gloss medium. So the paper peels away.
Yes.
After it's soaked pretty easily with the gloss medium. That's interesting.
No, it's a lot of work.
No, it's a lot of work. Yeah, it's not an easy
Yeah,
process.
I mean, you have to actually, you can print like anything pretty much on inkjet paper, or actually inkjet transparency, and then you use medium, and then you can transfer it to paper or wood. But there's different ways to doing transfers. Barry, I'm trying to go back to like I know you had done some
I think it's
Vassar.
up. I think it's up.
Vassar. Okay.
Yeah, I think it's up a little.
You started with the Vassar books and making collages out of that, and then
Yeah, so what happened is, when I start, it's often about materials around me. And so I got my Vassar quarterly, my sort of college quarterly. What do you do with that thing? And so, what I do is I cut up the images and I sort of recreate them, and they become a language that reflects what the college is trying to promote. And then I sort of subvert it and take it another way. This image here, these images came, I'm pretty sure, out of like the drawing pad or tools that I had. This was like right there. So I went ahead and cut out the colors at the bottom and some imagery. And, I drew. This was pretty much the beginning of me getting involved in the collage group. And so I set up some mountains and play and, the dagger with the dots. So some scale play. I enjoyed it. For me, when I can work with a collaged image, I can't draw that, 14th, 15th century building, or I can't draw the handle of that dagger. So, like Baldessari would say, why draw it? Steal it, take it, copy it. And I like that. I like that sort of, there's the Vassar one.
Yeah, this is when you started to take apart the magazine or the book.
This is where I'm taking apart the book. And, for me, the strength here is the black and lining up certain lines that go together. And, what I realized from this, I don't work this. I did in the beginning where I cut a piece that I want and put it down. I realized the way for me to work is you cut up a whole bunch, at least for me, I cut up a whole bunch of different pieces and then I put them together. And what I found is if I could have a whole bunch of pieces together on a piece of paper, I could literally spill them onto the background paper I want. And the spill was working, meaning I didn't have to use the artist's hand to assemble and make this happen. Now here, I'm doing that, and I'm purposely lining up lines, edges, and then twisting them a little. And, so that's a conscious play. I did realize that's a fun way to do it, but there is another way. And so it's an example when you engage something, you learn from it, you evolve and change, and, it's art teaches art, basically.
And then you do this.
Yeah, same principle. And, me realizing black is powerful. And, black and white, having a few basic shapes in there, a couple of squares. I'm a big fan of triangles. I'm not cutting anything really complicated at all. And I'm letting the complication come from the work that, the constructivists, the Russian constructivists did. And then in this work, I get a little more density in sort of the top right or middle top right area. And that's good. It creates a little more depth. And, art can be a balance between a complex area, a simple area. What I eventually did is I went outside the rectangle, and I found that very interesting. So here I'm working inside a white rectangle. But if you do collage like this and you let some of the triangles break the edge, I think it was Lawrence who did photography where he did away with the rectangle. And I got news for you. It's so simple, but 99.99% at least of photographs are in a rectangle. And breaking that goes a long way.
You talking about me and coughing all over the place?
Whenever I say Lawrence. Sorry.
So
And then
maybe
here-
you just do this one more, and then I'll move on to.
Sure.
I'll move on
before I choke. So limited palette, the white, you know,
before you choke. And
the gray, the black, you know, the touch of red goes a long way, a circle a little. Again, there is a balance. I say I can just spill this stuff out and I find it works. And at other times, it is a fine lineup. And the tricky thing with collage is you can line up and then you got to glue it. And when you glue it, you don't realize how important it is that it's, you know, within a 16th of an inch of where you need it. So the line carries through, and sometimes you want break in space and sometimes you don't. So collage is tricky like that. It can be tricky. And often when I build
I'm gonna
collage,
do one.
okay.
What size,
I'm gonna
what
do one
size?
more.
These are small. These collages are, one other thing I like to do is put the collage on a canvas as opposed to a piece of paper. It somewhat eliminates the framing, and it then makes it so it's work on canvas, and it gives it a little more weight to the collector. Here, I went out in a storm, maple tree had its bark shedded. I collected it, put it in a bucket. My wife doesn't know there were bugs in it, but I think she's listening. And then I went ahead and I laid them on a black canvas, which, by the way, is a lot of fun. And at some point, I glued them with glue. At other points, I just slopped on white acrylic paint, glued it, and let the white be real messy. I like this. It's a way of saying nature's got it all. Nature does it all. I keep a very light hand. Some of the works I do like this, it just has one piece of bark, and that does it for me. The shadows obviously work a lot here. You know, sometimes art, you know, you're working over and you're doing this and thinking, and sometimes you just grab and it's right, and it's more of a Zen approach, a simpler approach. All approaches work. I sort of mix it up.
I love what I am seeing here tonight because I come from really photography, or I guess music first. I was a musician first and then became a photographer, although my photography experience goes back to childhood. But so many of the things you're talking about here in Barry, you know, ripping up the bark and putting it on canvas and things like that. I did something with bark just a few weeks ago in Albany. It was just like that. It had sheared off. It was after a storm. And in that case, just photographing it. But in the past, I've taken ripped up photographs and into messes, and then pasting them onto a canvas or onto a board or onto something like that. Even now, I mean, I've been fully digital for I don't know, 15 years or something like that. But every new tool I pick up in terms of an app or something, they're all aimed at making it possible for me to be able to do digitally what I used to do manually. And I sort of feel, you know, outside of the circle of you guys, I just look up to you and say, wow, you took a brush and did that. Because I could never do that. I can't take a pencil and do that either. But in terms of just making things come together, even the image transfers. I started doing image transfers in about 97 or 98, going from analog to digital. And then the early inkjet printers were still nowhere near photographic quality. But it took me about 6 months of lots of experimentation. And I found that by putting a particular type of plastic sheets through the inkjet printer, I could get a stencil that I then would take watercolor paper and soak it for exactly 1 minute. Anything more was too much, anything less was too little. It was amazing. The 1 minute mark was perfect. And laying it out on a glass, actually, and then taking a squeegee and just taking the puddles off of it, taking the plastic, laying it down and rubbing out the ink. And it created 2 very successful series, but both of which I'm still proud of. This is back in the 90s. And and all the time, I mean, people are saying, "Oh, your watercolor works," or what kind of brushes do you use? It's like, I wish I could use a brush. So thank you for showing me this stuff tonight.
No, thanks for sharing too, Lawrence. Jill, this is one of yours?
So this is a recent one. I did some watercolors in the background that I cut out. You could see elements of everybody in here. Barry talked about lining up angles together, and Deanna, it brings up perspective, so I could see Deanna's influence. And then also Liz, she borrows a lot from architectural magazines. So in some ways, this recent one sort of represents all of us. During COVID in the beginning, I used to listen to 30s music, and I started doing watercolor. It was kind of like everybody was doing watercolors in the beginning of COVID just because it was very meditative. I'm just going to run through some of these. So that's one that I did in the group. And also using some of my own photography and also shape and geometric shapes and fashion. That one's kind of like 60s influence.
I like this one. I like this one very much. I think, you've got the circle on the circle and the curve on the right. You've got the sort of circle in the square and the cutout. And then, of course, down below, the blue reads different ways. And, negative space is tough, but you got it balanced here. You left a lot negative, but it's very balanced and it works very well. And, you're achieving a lot with a minimal amount of tools here. Again, vertical lines that are, repeating themselves, the curve. And then in that top circle, the detail is very important. If that top circle was just, say, orange, it wouldn't do it. It wouldn't get you the depth play that the little white cutouts throw in and the little red and the black at the bottom, that little circle. So it's often, and I would imagine you sort of think, oh, does this go there? The little changes make a big difference.
Thanks, Barry. This is actually a door in Brooklyn, this circular thing, and I was really fascinated by it. And then I integrated magazine parts. This is something, actually, when I was at Liz's, these are some pieces that I cut out. So making it both geometric and including a figure. And this is actually, I think this is a transparency image transfer that I put on top of. This actually is just, these are my photographs, actually. I took a photograph of this at a flea market. This is the street view, and then some cutout of some things. And I'll just do, I guess we're out of time, so I'll do that one more. So this is actually a photograph of mine, and then I think in some ways Liz's influence with architectural magazines.
You've worked with clocks a lot, Jill?
I do. That's definitely am drawn to surrealism in my photography. More recently in the last couple of years, abstract photography. But I definitely am drawn to clocks. Time. In some ways, just being more aware of time than I have been in the past. Although I've always been interested in surrealistic art since I was a teenager.
I think you're hitting on something here. I think time, just like water, is one of the sort of, well, maybe even time more so.
Water.
Yes, if you can, think of Muybridge's photographs of the horses moving. In those series, he's capturing time. Often art is a flat distilled image. Nothing wrong with a Mondrian and sort of, blank time. But when you can sort of bring time in, that is a surreal effect in itself. And I think time, water, I'm missing a few others, but there are maybe 4 or 5 sort of critical, elements that bite our era that are just, and it may not be only our era, it may be, all of art. If you see a weathered wooden sculpture by an African tribe, the wood is withered by time, and that gives it more life. And if you look at the Greek sculptures, I hate to say it, but if they're not broken, they're somehow not as beautiful. If you look at an old red barn, if it's brand new, but if it's worn and time has discolored and some of the boards are warped, there's a lot more interest because, of course, it speaks to death. It speaks to transition. It speaks to the fact that we are not fixed and we're ephemeral.
Definitely. Like these are a lot of these are photographs that I've taken. This is like an old building in Williamsburg from many years ago, and it was tarred and in the process of being renovated. And this is the same door, and then this is a photo from Chelsea and a photograph of water. But that's interesting to hear certain themes. So, oops. So what I'll do is unshare, and then I'll throw up the link of the image transfer video that I have too.
Yeah, you can put it in the chat. First, applause for Jill and all the presenters. Very nicely done. And of course for Mo for modeling.
Mo, you're
Mo.
incredible. I was going to suggest maybe we could set up a figure drawing class with Mo and actually pay her to pose for us. I don't know. I'm just putting it out there because she's fabulous, and I've got some decent, I've got some decent stuff, and I haven't done figure drawing in so long.
Yeah, and I loved it. I missed it, and that's part of the reason Mo is here. And we sort of, it's like cake. You forget I like lemon meringue, but you have the piece. You're like, why don't I eat it every day? And life drawing Mo in particular is like that. So
the fact that also she knows how, Mo, how to do this and get yourself in the little square. I'm not even, in a way that's like great to draw is phenomenal.
Trying to figure it out. But you know what I thought about collage? I wanted to say,
of course,
I like it a lot like writing, because you seem to always be re-editing. At least I see that in your work. You're always like, I changed it up this week. I haven't seen it for 10 years, but I'm going to change it again.
You're so right about that, Mo. She's right. You're right about that. We talk about that sometimes too, and I do go back to pieces sometimes and finish them, but there is sort of a sense of it never being finished.
You don't want to touch a watercolor, but unless it gets faded, I guess. But collage, it's like, oh no.
I've got something to say about that. Piece is never finished. From the movie, what was it called? 6 Degrees of Separation. Donald Sutherland plays a Park Avenue art dealer. He only deals in old masters of $1 million and up. He goes to pick up his young daughter at school because they got to catch a flight to make it to Martha's Vineyard before the rush. And the school, they know he's coming, and the teacher knows he's coming. And so when he knocks on the door, he says, okay, little Katie, this is your dad. Oh, say hello. Hi, children, this, that, the other thing. And he looks up on the walls, and then he takes little Katie out the door, and he has to stop, and he has to wait. He has to risk missing the flight because he has to go back in and ask the teacher, how did she do it? How did she get these kids to make such amazing works? The use of color, the use of empty space, the incompleteness, the completeness, just the emotions in here, and the relationships and the colors. How'd you do it? How did you do it? And she said, oh, it's easy. I just take them away from them before they ruin them.
That is a good lesson. It's something, sometimes we overpaint a painting, No question about it. That is hard to know. We once had an artist speak about just that, quite a brilliant artist. And he was talking, he didn't use the word finish. And of course, I'm forgetting the word he used, but it had to do with that it has a cohesive balance and that artworks are never finished because you could always morph them and change them. You know, a Mondrian, maybe not, a Leonardo, maybe not, but, you know, 9 out of 10 works, they can continue to morph in ways. So it's not about it being ended. And I like to joke, but it's really true. When I do some paintings, I walk away from them when there's too much to resolve, where there's just too many problems I don't want to deal with. And that's the end point. It doesn't sound like, you know, that should be the end point of art, but sometimes that's my approach. I do want to reach out to Michael. Whenever you have Michael Krasowitz in the house, you have to open up a can of Michael. And so, Michael, I'm going to ask you, because, you know, we're drawing while we do this. I don't know if you were drawing, but, you know, I want to ask you, when you draw, how do you know you've done a right line? And indeed, my question might be wrong. The word right may not be it, but how do you know you've done a line that's real or that is you're happy with? And is it's never a line, it's the whole form? Or, you know, what's your process for sort of seeing your work and knowing you're in the groove? Because I know when I'm not in the groove. I know when I'm forcing it, and I know sometimes when I am dead on. How do you do it, Michael?
Well, for me, I would say that mostly comes into effect when I'm painting. So what I try to do is just leave the brushstroke. If I make a mark, I leave it, and then I build it up. I rebuild the painting over and over. Same thing, like, so I'll do a layer, and then I'll finish it, and then I'll go back in, because knowing the next week I'm going to go back and rework it. So I'll make the marks to refine the line, and then next week I'll start with the glaze, and then I'll go back into marks. So I just build it up over time. I don't stress about stuff like that, honestly. What I worry about is if I'm repeating myself. If I'm very conscious of that. Oh, I've done this already. You know, move it in another direction because I've seen this already. And so that's one thing I do. I do wanted to say one thing, guys. I've been teaching collage, believe it or not. And last week I did a workshop and I was the substitute teacher in the collage class. And a lot of them were using jelly plates, which is something, you know, which is kind of a, you know, it seems like an amateurish thing, but you can get really nice stuff with jelly plates and monoprinting and combining monoprinting with collage, which is really cool. And this is something else, as you guys were talking, I thought I'd share with you guys. This is a company called Digital Art Supply. I don't know if you've ever heard of it.
Oh, Das. Yeah, I use that.
Her name is Bonnie Lahoda, the teacher.
Yeah, she's great.
She's really interesting, and she makes this, you know, like a lot of people use overhead projection film and they print on their inkjet printers and then they transfer that. But this stuff that she makes is like a refined, I used to have a big printer. So it's a refined version of the inkjet film that you get for overhead projectors. And if you print on this with your inkjet printer, when you go to make your transfer, it's much more detailed than if you use overhead projection film. And she's got, I met her.
This stuff right here.
There was a show at the Brooklyn Museum of Printmaking a few years ago, and her and a couple other women were kind of like doing demos, and they invented so many interesting ways of using collage. She does this thing called digital fresco, where you can print on the inkjet paper and you coat a piece of wood with a material, and you can transfer onto these things, and it has a kind of feeling like fresco. So it's really interesting, and she's got like 3 books that she's written. Her name is LH. You know her, right, Jill?
What is the company again that you were saying? Digital what?
It's Digital DASS. Digital Art Studio, and she has seminars, and her name is Bonnie Lahoda. Jill, you work with them, right? With her?
I've worked with it. Yeah, I'm throwing up the last YouTube I'm gonna put up. I used her stuff. Yeah, hers works the best actually. It's expensive. It's a little pricey, but I buy the smaller sheets. But I used her inkjet transparency film and also her DAS transfer medium.
Yeah, I was buying bags of gelatin, like you'd buy clear gelatin, but she makes her own thing, which is supposed to be better. And it's really, I know, like I said, I was doing all day. I had them people trying different kinds of transfers, using
That's
mediums
great.
like that. This gets really clean imagery, and it's interesting to work with. And it just, like I said, I've been teaching, for some reason, collage is something that I've been seeing more and more myself lately. And it's my 2 cents. Thank you, Barry, for letting me stick my 2 cents in.
It's always more
I just
than
want to say
2 cents.
these are some of the best collages I've seen. So I just want to say
Wow.
thank you for putting it all together. And I mean, really, they were really great collages. And I really love the concept of actually doing paintings from some of them, because, you almost use it as like a sketch tool in a way it can be, and then and then actually refer to it to do a painting. Takes it to like just even the next level, and they're just really great. And Babs, I just want to say, is that your show right now that's behind you? Or is that
It is.
Fabulous.
It's the new
That's
show that's
fantastic.
Wow.
Wow, good for you. That looks really great.
Yeah, it's been about I guess it's close to a year's worth of work, and you can't see the spiral real well, but the spiral is made out of upcycled bricks, upcycled paper bricks, and it's all junk mail and my files and old tax papers.
Wow.
Cast these bricks out of that, and then those are silk organza columns that are all hand stitched. Different yarns are on there, and they have graphite. I did graphite tree rubbings of chopped limbs, some fresh and some that were grown over, and then those are actual stumps. And then there's trees in these old pails. And I was thinking about Barry's comment on time and the passage of time, but just what happens to the tree over time, but also the use of these really old pails that I've collected for years. And so the trees are in those pails, and I have drawings in there too. You can't see them, but there's some little drawings on the wall, and then there's a big drawing of a fallen tree. So there's a lot of elements to this installation. Anyway, that's it. It's called Lost Trees, and it's up.
How long is it going to be up? How long?
Well, it's going to be up to December 1st. It's in Tampa.
Where is it?
It's in Tampa, Florida. It's what's the size of the room? So it's about 30, I think 32 by 25 or something like that feet.
It's so beautiful.
Oh, thank you. I've gotten
Incredible.
comments from people where they say they walk in and they can't believe how this space has been transformed into almost this magical. They called it magical, which is so strange because it wasn't something that I didn't think of magical, but I was trying to do this thing where I wanted to create this idea of ephemerality and the tree disappearing, this idea that a tree that we're killing them, number one, but number two, that they don't last forever. We always think of them lasting forever, but then yet you do have ones that last for so long, and they give you so much information and they contribute so much. So there was this idea of a reverence for the tree. And a couple of people mentioned they said it felt like a sacred space.
Yes.
And talked about it feeling like a henge, as if you went to Stonehenge and you had this place where. So that was fascinating because I'm thinking this is like so soft and not at all. I would have never thought of that. So it was just fascinating, the comments that came from these this piece. Anyway.
Babs, you
Yes.
hit on some critical words there. Transformation. As artists, whether we transform materials or we try and transform the viewer. Transformation is a critical theme. Magic, it seems like magic, but alchemy, definitely one of the critical themes in the art world today. It's that making magic, that alchemy, where you somehow, you don't make gold, from tin or, base metals as the alchemists wanted, but that idea that you're somehow enriching something that's lesser by putting together another lesser object. And so certainly all your individual items in there are fine, but when they're together, they create a spin, a relationship that should evoke more. And that's like, you put all these things in a cauldron, you mix them up, and, it's sort of the witch's magic in the best way. And as artists, that's what we do. And, I can't help but say it. All of us, except me, are really good with your materials, your skills, your techniques. We sort of forget, we think it's all this free stuff here and there. You're all like experts in your fields, whether it's photography, collage. When you start to mention the transfers and all this different things, I'll be frank, I get lost, and for you who's talking about it, it's like the back of your hand. You totally have it. And, that's the advantage. One thing Buffett said, Warren Buffett and someone else recently, a similar thought, you want to go deep in your field. You want to become an expert. And I think to some extent, all of us become experts. And the more you push deeper, whether you're in finance and private equity, and you're really deep in it, well, then you're more valuable. Likewise, as an artist, when you jump into your space, whatever space it is, the more you get to it and hone it and really get deep, that becomes the value to someone else, because you then become unique. And I think we all do that, and we often don't realize it. The only way we see it is when someone else sees our work. Because if you look in your studio, it's all vomiting together, and it's all in your mind, and it's there, and you're not seeing any object. But take a work out of your studio and go put it somewhere else, and you'll see what you really made. And it really is a long journey that has taken a lot of time. I want to thank everybody, especially Jill. This was put together like probably 36 hours ago. And I like that, the sort of sporadic nature. And of course, all the presenters and everyone who made comments. That's what it's about. It's about community, connecting, and round of applause for everybody. Thank you, guys. If you want to contribute to Mo, reach out to me. She's on PayPal. She's got her email up there, which may even be her PayPal. Mo's great. I'm going to listen to your advice, Liz. I'm trying to integrate life drawing into talk. That sort of synergy, like Michael at his, where he has work up, he's got a projection of his work. He has Wendy dancing. He's got all these different overlays. In the old days, a Gesamtwerk was like the combining of all the arts. And so opera was one of the first Gesamtwerks in the 16th century. Today, it's Disneyland, and it's a terrible version of combining everything. So it really is vomit. But if you can sort of, and if you notice a lot of artwork, there's sound accompanying video, accompanying performance, and you're trying to get at something that's like more. It's again, the magic that Babs referred to, and the sort of transformation by combining things that you might not necessarily combine, whether it's figurative form with geometric, or it's different media or mediums that you're putting together. So we all inspire each other every time. There'll be another Talk Tuesday. Who knows what it'll be about, but it will be something of interest. And you guys bring the interest. Thank you. Have a great night, everybody.
Thank you,
Bye,
Barry.
everybody.
Thank you, Barry.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Barry.
everybody.
Welcome.
Thank
Good
you.
show.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Night.
Bye.